All right. I would like to thank everybody for joining in this evening. We have a really great topic. Welcome. How do you pronounce that again? Maka?
Maka, you said it right.
I would like to welcome Daquan, and I would like to welcome and of course my co-host Tanza. It's a really great topic tonight. Do men really want?
Me and you got too, Esther.
Right. So I'm gonna just go on and state my opinion. I think that there are a lot of men out there that do want commitment, but I also think it's like a needle in a haystack. Trying to find for commitment. Can you mute your mic, please? Can I have you mute?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Can I have you mute while you're because we can hear your noise in the background?
Okay, okay, yeah, I'm getting, okay.
All right, thank you. So yeah, as I was saying, I think there are some good men out here. I also just want to clarify, a person asked me a question the other day when I told them that I was doing this topic. She wanted to know if this was just for people that aren't in relationships. No, it's for anybody's opinion, because just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion. And maybe you want to share that and let people know that you did find a great relationship. So I'll leave the floor open to anybody else who would like to voice their opinion.
I'm gonna let the gentleman go because you know I'm highly opinionated. So go ahead, guys.
So the question is, do men want commitment?
Yes, do men really want commitment?
I think it depends on the man. I'm highly opinionated too, and a little controversial. But that's
glad
my
to
words,
see
sorry.
you.
But I think it depends on the man and how much options he has, what kind of man he is, how much esteem he has. Is going to depend. I feel for a man who doesn't have that much options probably might cling more to commitment, while a man who has more options might be on the fence with it. Just depends on you know, his morals, his values.
Yeah.
That's a short version.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the same sentiments in mind. I think again, it's just dependent on the person, where they are in their life, and where their priorities actually lie. Me myself, I do would value commitment, but again, like just again, like what I have going on in my life, I don't know how much I could give somebody my full attention right now. But I mean, if you know, you never know where things could lead, and if you meet that right person, yeah. But yeah, and then we spoke off camera about it too, so my testament hasn't changed yet. But yeah, I just think it depends on the person.
Okay. That's
I think. I'm sorry, Ms. Londa, go ahead.
No, I was telling him that's good to hear. And it's also good to hear that you can also just say, like, right now, this is not the time in your life where you might, you know, you can't commit. I mean, a lot of men won't be honest and say that, as women too. So I don't want to just say men, you know. So,
yeah.
Okay, you can have the time to.
I was just gonna say, you know, I'm of the opinion, I believe in people. I don't think the male, female title really makes much of a difference.
Right.
People are people, and emotions are emotions, and they're the same for everybody. You may see that men may respond a little differently, but it doesn't mean their feelings or their emotions are any different. But my opinion and my experience in life is nobody is ready for commitment until the right person comes along. So you can have, you know, a great girl, and if you're a man, and she'll just be great and everybody will think she's wonderful, but she's not wonderful enough for you. And so therefore, and thus, you're not in a committed state. And the same thing works for women. So I think we're all the same. I don't think that commitment is the real issue. I think that people get into relationships and expect another person to feel exactly the same way about them that they feel about them. And oftentimes that's not the case. And that's why men won't commit. But if you're the right girl at the right time for the right guy, commitment is never going to be an issue. I don't think. That's been my experience. But if you're not, and it's not, or he's not, or she's not, then, you know, people are going to wander off and do other things, especially, you know, like the gentleman already said, if they've got other things going on. But it is definitely my experience that for anybody, male or female, I don't care how hard life is, I don't care what you've got going on, if the right person crosses your path, you are going to make time for them.
I agree.
Hands down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how about you, Rico? What do you have to say?
I agree. If you like really into somebody, you're gonna make time for that person. Or if you feel that person is special to you, or something about you, something about their energy that connects with yours, you definitely gonna make time. So I would agree wholeheartedly. I would say a man, though I know, look for different things when looking for a woman than what a woman look for in a man.
Can I ask some of those things are?
Yeah.
Well, we simple. We really want like beauty, cooperation, and the womb to make your own legacy with. You know, you want to have your own kids, and you know that's why a lot of guys don't like to step into stepfather situation. I was one of them. You know, which why I stayed in my first marriage so long, even though it wasn't no good. But I wanted to raise my kids. I didn't want somebody else over my kids, and I didn't want to be stepdad. You know, nowhere else. So I just finished that one out, then went into something different.
Okay, so is it safe to say, can I ask you guys, is it safe to say that, and I don't even want to just say only men, but I'm going to say people. Is it safe to say that a lot of times people get in relationships for convenience?
For say that again, that last part.
For convenience.
Convenience. Yeah, sometimes it's just for a place to stay. Sometimes it's just a sexual connection. Sometimes, you know, one person needs something more out of it than the other person. Sometimes, I mean, people stay together for all types of crazy reasons, even when they're not meant for each other. You know, sometimes you'll see that relationship last years, even though it don't go nowhere. But you know, some people so used to each other. It's all kind of real reasons. But I never understood why my stepdad stayed with my mom, and you know, just watching like how she was with him, and then him like being the stepdad to us 3 kids and having 3 of his own and bringing everybody together. And then, you know, I seen just like a lot of stuff that I just never understood why he stayed in that situation, because it wasn't always the best situation for him. But he stayed with her with my mom till she passed away.
Well, he must have really loved her.
Yeah, he must have really did, because she used to do a
Really
number on it.
from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's like, you know, so I even look at some of my grandmas. You know, I had a grandma that had like 10 different kids with many different men, and then watch how like some of the generations has changed, and grandma's gotten a lot younger, and you know, a lot of things are different. The new generation and dating in this day and age is more about what you got or what you can give to the other person. For a woman, it's more of, you know, what can the man, every woman want a man that's up here with everything and with this and that and that and that. And some of them have requirements.
I wouldn't say everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Well,
know, a lot of times we as women, we get in relationships and stay in relationships for the wrong reasons too. And it's not just because of
what you can
support or what you can get from the man. Because you have to remember that we're working with biological clocks. And
Yes.
sometimes we are in a relationship and try to hold on to it because it's time for us to have kids.
Right.
And we've decided, and so a lot of times, and often it takes a minute for you to sit back and to grow into your truth, to realize that, yeah, I never really loved this guy, I was out of time, or, other things like that. So we all have, people are just screwed up from.
Yeah.
I mean, you made an interesting point about that biological clock.
Yeah.
Because, that's a real thing for women.
It's for real. And we won't admit it though, but it's for real.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Because a man sort of reaches his sexual and financial peak in his later years. And that's why you can see a lot of men. Like right now, I'm 50, but my wife was 25. So, but
and you can still have children.
And I can still have children. And that's exactly why I chose her, because I wanted to have kids again. And I felt like, it was messed up so much the first time. I at least wanted to do it right one time before I left the earth. So I'm like, I put a lot of thought into this one.
Yeah.
And, I really couldn't do nothing with an older woman because, what experience am I going to give her that she hasn't had already?
Definitely not willing to have kids again.
No, she can't, basically.
Or she can't, right.
So, and then, so that puts another dynamic in the relationship. And then if she already has kids, you basically bring in that man debt, another man's debt, and what man want to go into that? When you got options.
A woman that's like in her late 40s or 50s, you don't think her kids are adults by now?
Hey, I know women that's 40 and 50 with no kids, but still single. Yeah. And it was because they waited around too long. Like I always told myself this, I always figured, I want to grow old with somebody because I don't want to be that dude that's 65 years old in the club in that purple suit, everything all purple, talking about, yeah, I get it, one more drink. I'm gonna have you. Y'all know that's always that one dude in the club that everybody laughing at. You ain't laughing, you laughing at him, not with him. But I was like, so, I knew there's a value to growing old with somebody simply for, who gonna bust that pimple on your butt? Somebody that love you, hey, that's what I'm saying. Well, definitely a new woman ain't gonna do it. So, it's somebody you gotta grow old with, to get all of that, I mean,
what?
I'm adding real dynamics to it.
I want to jump in and I want to welcome JD, who just joined us, and bring him up to speed. Thank you for joining us. So the topic this evening is, do men really want commitment? So you can jump in and voice your opinion.
I think that's a difficult thing. I think it depends on like how we look at relationships to begin with, like from the moment that we're born. And most of us don't really have clarifiable examples for relationships. I think that's the first thing. But then also, like, I think that there's this level of what that person said before, that spoke before me, is like this level of like us really being afraid of being alone, like as human beings, and us not willing to admit it, especially as men, right? Because we're so conditioned to not show emotion. And if you like combine that with like the idea of mortality, especially as Black men, right? We're so scared of death, and society, society introduces that to us in a variety of ways. We just want someone in order to like beat mortality with. And then when you start thinking about that, when you start combining those two, it starts making a lot more sense as to why we as men kind of have issues with commitment, because of the fact that we don't have the right examples to show us like how to beat that. And then secondly, we have that overlapping issue with us not being able to admit that we're scared of mortality. So those two things combined, like they make for a heavy doses of like unreliable context surrounding commitment, but it's possible. I really think it's possible. And I have good examples around me to show that now. but it's still difficult. It's still very difficult.
I
Bro,
think
you
those
made
are
a
really good points. Yeah, he's bringing.
that's a very good point. Especially,
But I said
when
that
you see
men
people
don't.
die around you, when you
Yeah,
see people, die around you, you start feeling like, dang, I want every day to count. And then,
Right.
being black and being in America adds a whole nother stress level to the black man's life as far as high blood pressure. Like here, I'm not worried about the police pulling me over and shooting me. So I have a whole different dynamic. Life is a lot simpler. I don't have the stresses. My health is better, versus just being in America. I'm always, I'm looking. I don't want to get pulled over. I don't know, am I going to die by the police today? Or is it going to be my own kind? Or am I going to go to jail for something I ain't do? It happened to us so regularly just because of the color of our skin. I mean, I can have the greatest bank loan, the greatest business plan, but I'm never going to get the bank loan or the home loan because of the color of my skin, But if I'm in a country where the people look like me, guess what happened when I go in the bank? I get results. But in America, I'm only going to be able to grow a certain level because white people are intimidated by a black man's growth. And when you start to grow, either they want to control it. If they do give it to you, they want to control it some kind of way. They'll rather give you money than to have you make it on your own. And these are some of my white friends. They don't even know subconsciously they showed me this. And I'm like, wow, So I can imagine what a white person that don't like me think, because my own white friends is doing this and not even subconsciously, not even realize. And I'm just like, they don't even see that as racist because of the way they was raised. But damn, you would rather give me money than to help me have my own over here because you can control that, and then it's always, I got good white friends. They'll give me thousands of dollars and be like, Pico, pay me back when you get some extra money. And I'm like, shit, I ain't never heard of no extra money. So does that mean I ain't got to pay you back? Because you're going to be taking me to Judge Judy maybe over this one because you said when I get some extra money. And that's a white concept. That's not even a black concept. That's a white concept. Extra money. I'm going to take a year off life. I heard a white man say that. I'm going to travel on the boat and take a year off life. Me as a black man, you think I can even consider taking a month off of life?
Well, you know what, Miss Rhonda? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I ask where you are?
In the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
I was just going to say that, with what was just said, being very true. And I had said earlier that I feel like men and women are no different when it comes to their emotions. How they may express it is different, but men are just as lonely as women are out here, and women are, whatever. But,
I think our emotions though are more. I think we're more emotional than men though.
I don't think we're more emotional. I just think that we are more free to show them. We're allowed to show them. And it's more
that's
when you want to know where that comes from.
Society.
Bringing up boys and you're telling them, shut up.
Shut it up, right.
Man up. And so they grow up thinking that as a man, they're not supposed to show emotions or that it's okay to cry. And it is,
Yeah. So now we got a lot of black men raised by single black women, so they show more
that's
emotion.
What I was going to say is that when it comes to commitment nowadays, I think it's less about men, whether they're wanting commitment. I think it's us, and it could be my age too. It could be, because I'm not a young girl. I'm pushing now. And we cut from a different cloth now. We've done it, seen it.
So much. Okay, so I want to hit what Rico said, and then I want to hit what you said. Because this is my second time hearing you say that it comes from single mothers. I kind of.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say anything about single moms.
Rico.
Oh, yeah. Rico.
Yeah, you say that you think a lot of the things that go on with men comes from being raised by a single mother. Well, I kind of disagree on that because I raised two boys as a single mother, and they stick by their women.
Can I elaborate on that?
Okay.
Because I listen to the women now, and I'm listening to the men that they complaining about. And it's the younger generation of men that they complaining about. And then they labeling like all men under their relationship with this one type of man. And I think, you know, a lot of that came because there's no father in the house. So, you know, my mom used to tell me, I'm your mama and your dad. But she could never teach me to be a man, no matter how many times she told me she could. And realistically, she could never do that. But
So
that didn't stop her.
how to be a man? What do you feel like it takes to teach you to be a man?
But it takes other men. See, this is why I started the Superman Project.
No,
Because I owe it to my
Answer the
community.
question.
Wait, what?
What do you think it takes to teach you to be a man?
It takes other men to teach men to be men. It does. A woman can't teach a man to be a man. Like I can't teach my daughters to be women. So if I'm a single father and I have a daughter, guess what? I'm gonna pay attention carefully to the women I had her around because that's who she gonna idolize and that's who she gonna build her character after. Because she ain't gonna get it from me. I'm not gonna be walking around asking to use her eyeliner with my shirt tied up in a knot. So how she gonna learn that?
Ask that, but you can still teach her things that a young lady needs to know.
From a father's aspect, you know, which a young woman needs. That's why they do need their fathers in their life, you know. But I can't show her how to be no woman. I can never know that. I can't think like a woman. If I could, that's a problem. If I could think like a woman, something wrong with me. Something wrong with my upbringing. I couldn't force myself to think like that. Because that's not my reality. I'm a man. I do what a man does. I think like a man thinks. And I'm a black man. So I got to think like a black man thinks. And I'm in America. And so I got to maneuver all these traps and then teach my son not to fall in these same holes, you know, and I went through hell to keep him out of the penitentiary just because I was smart enough to see how as soon as he graduated high school, you know, they wanted to try to charge him with all kinds of, you know, Trump get elected and we see all this racist stuff in America. My son get jumped at school and they charge the white boys with 6 counts of disorderly conduct, but he gets 6 counts of 6 different white boys. He gets charged with 6 counts. They all got 1 count of disorderly conduct, but he gets 6 counts of assault for them attacking him on racist Trump Day. So, and I had to pay for that case and then move him from Buffalo so I could save my son from the prison system because they're trying to send him right from the high school. He was graduating in like 2 months. They wanted to send him right into the prison system. Dude never been in trouble before in his life. And they like, why is he this monster they trying to portray him to be? What's going on in the house? And I'm like, you get 6 figures to tell me what's going on in the school. He and I fighting in the house. But you want to know what's going on in my house. Tell me what's happening in the school. And the whole time I'm there, I'm in the office with his mom. And when the white boy kids are being addressed, they address the father. But every time they address anything with my son, they act like I'm not in the room and go directly to his mom. So you offended me. So you just gonna make her a single mom, even though I'm sitting right here.
I want to bring it back to topic. And then so let me just ask you this. What would you teach your son as a man as far as how to be with a woman?
How to be with a woman?
Yes, like if we're going to teach your son, this is how you should be with a woman in a relationship. What would you teach him? What would you tell him?
I would tell him that, take your values, seriously, and be with a woman that you really into. So you don't have to stray elsewhere. Be with a woman that give you what you need, And one thing I would tell him I would say, go meet her mama first, because that's what you get. If you go to the house and the mama ain't got no man, or that dude up in the room, or he comes straight home from work and go right to the room and don't talk to nobody, but he paying for everything in the house, that's what you gonna get. So pay attention to her mama. Go meet her mama first, because that's exactly what you finna get. And if so I would give him that advice, and just tell him pay attention and get into somebody that he really could enjoy being with, somebody he can build with, because there's nothing like having a stalemate and when you can have a soulmate.
So I think something that I basically have been able to research for over the last 2 years is, and this sounds really like freaking hyper intelligent, which which is not supposed to be. I'm so sorry, but basically, what you see with Black parents in particular is that they're people who are raising children. They're not parents. Parenting is a skill, right? And that's something that we don't often like really sit down and learn and observe. Like, for instance, my father and I had a conversation about what he did before he got me, right? And he said, like, I don't know, just like get stuff for your mother and that's it. But my mom was reading parenting books. My mom was reading like books upon like even like how a baby speaks and like what that means, et cetera, like how babies respond. And my dad was not. My dad was just hyper focusing on like just the fact that he was going to be a father, which is great. But that's his experience in being a father, and my mom's experience in being a mother was different. So I think often we don't realize that parenting is a skill. We just become parents because of the fact that we give birth to someone. And I think that that's the main issue often, because of the fact that if we don't know how to be parents, then we don't know how to give things away, if that makes sense. And I think that that speaks more so towards as well, like teaching people about commitment. Not only do we not have, like, yes, we don't have great examples, but at the same time, people also don't really know what parenting is. And that makes it a lot harder of a struggle than it's supposed to be, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. What you're saying makes
That's
sense.
a really smart brother. Man.
But I think that goes back to the whole male female aspect too, because men are usually focused on tasks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm about to be a father. I need a house. I need a crib. I need whatever. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to get it. Where women are more focused on the emotional and the
The
connection.
nurturing aspect, yeah.
Right. The nurturing of the child. And those are just, gender specific roles that come naturally to the male
Mm-hmm.
female. Not that a father doesn't love, but his first priority is to do. Where a mom, generally speaking, because we all know that there are exceptions to every rule, but
Right.
generally speaking, a
And also
woman.
social conditioning, obviously, like
Right.
that's social conditioning where that comes into play. But I definitely do agree. Like, I think that when we look at commitment in particular, I think a lot of men don't even know that polyamory is possible for them, one. Secondly, they also don't know what that looks like, so they practice non-ethical polyamory, or not non-ethical non-monogamy, right?
Right.
Where they're oh, I'm so sorry, there's a dog somewhere. But they practice basically to cheat instead of like to communicate about like that, the fact that there is something out there that they would like to pursue, which is fine, but it's about communication. And I think
Right.
that that's the problem with commitment. People think that because I've heard people say that because I'm not attracted to you, like, no, the reason why I go outside of the house is because this, that, or the third. But the reason is because you're not really understanding what a relationship could look like if you communicate. Like, that's the difference. And I think that that's where
Or
it
you're just
starts and
really
where it
not with the
begins.
one you want to be with.
Right.
You don't
And
want
that's
to say it
okay.
for whatever
Right.
reason. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why somebody like myself, I don't like to really rush with the whole girlfriend thing just like right away. Like, I have to really get to know somebody. I have to know what I'm getting myself into, because just like the gentleman Rico said, like, time is ticking. You know what I mean? It'd be a shame to really waste your time on some, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I usually wait. I mean, I have a strict rule about that. I wait at least 6 months to a year before I even get into the whole title thing with young ladies and stuff like that. And you really get to see somebody in a true element. And when it comes down to commitment, and even just being a parent like I am myself, having a son and two daughters, I've always tried to instill a sense of values in all my children. Even though the relationship between me and a mother wasn't the best, I've always tried to set an example. So yeah, I do believe in community. So I'll have my children, they do things like boxing and dance and stuff like that and be around other kids, especially when it comes down to boxing. There's other men there and other women there. So they get to see that environment, you know. I'm also very cautious with the language, because they're at that age where they start asking questions like, why didn't it work out between me and mommy and things of that nature. Then they have a stepfather, and then they had another child and things like that. So it's been occasions where mommy has said certain stuff about daddy, then it's gotten back. So then I gotta be the one that, I gotta be the one that takes the high road and all a lot of that stuff. So it's definitely a trip. And I think that they see that, and just spending that valuable time with them, because they're so young, and I am working so hard to give them a life that I never had, and also facing my own personal limiting beliefs in situations like that. But it's really about being the standard for not only your son but your daughters, because your daughters are going to look for those same positive traits in the men that they're pursuing. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I really believe that having a commitment, how can I say that? Being committed to somebody, you really got to know what you're getting yourself into.
But how can you? Because I say this all the time, that we as people, I personally believe it's a 5-year increment. So every 5 years, you're shifting. You're shifting in your thoughts. You're shifting in what you think you know. And when you think about it, you look over from the time you're 10 to the time you're 15, you think completely different. 15 to 20, completely different. 20 to 25, completely different. 25 to 30. And it keeps going. And so that's why commitment is so hard, because as we're changing individually, you hook up. That's why the saying of youth is wasted on the young, because it's not until you get through a few seasons and you've seen a few falls and a few winters and all that other good stuff before you start settling, right? And so, it's unfortunate that as people, so much of what we have to do, especially as women, we have to do at a young age. So that's why we settle in with men sometimes, because we know our clocks are ticking. And there are many, many women that want to be mothers. But if we could wait, I'm 48 years old now, and I would do much better as a wife or as a parent or as any of that today than I ever could have done at 50, if I choose to. And I would probably make a better decision today about whether or not I want to do that than I would or did when I was in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So you're right. You have to, really take a lot of time, but even all the time in the world is still not going to tell you what you're going to end up with at the end. That's true. Because we change. We just change.
But are you growing with the person that you with too? I mean, you going through these stuff. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, if you take the time and you just start to naturally see okay, are we on the same page? That's where the communication stuff comes in. That's what I'm at. I mean, I date around, I live in New York City now. I'm from Buffalo myself. So coming here, it just seems like everything is just like now. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's the generation with the whole novelty and immediate gratification and stuff like that. I mean, that might have to be something that we definitely got to all work on, really being in relationships, especially being Black people, coming up in environments that are somewhat or very chaotic and dysfunctional. But like I said, I will take that needed time, because I have to make sure I'm prepared for that next relationship. And if the person I'm gonna be with, we have to be on the same page.
Right.
Wrong with, okay, it ain't working out, cool, you know what I'm saying? We just do our own thing and break off, you know what I mean? I understand.
But I think maybe too that taking that time is about seeing if you're growing and changing together. Because if you take a year to get to know somebody, certainly it's not going to be the same as it was in the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. And so you'll see if you guys are moving in the same direction at the same pace, maybe.
And I also think that like as far as, and maybe this is again, I'm not trying to be hyper intellectual, I'm just trying to put my 2 cents in. But basically what I've noticed is that men often don't have commitments with themselves, whereas women do, right? Women have a relationship with themselves and they build a relationship with their womanhood. For a man, the relationship is very restrictive. And because of the fact that it's extremely restrictive because of the idea of masculinity, right? We often form very harsh relationships with commitments, especially if it's about ourselves.
So do you
Um,
think that that's new? Because I feel
no,
like
that's definitely
it
not new.
used to be
No,
that women didn't have relationships with themselves. Everything about them was about the man that they were
that
with.
is, but that is also true.
Yeah,
However, women did have this internal connection with their womanhood, whereas manhood as we know it is made. Like it's not a feasible thing. Womanhood as we know it today, honestly, is going to go back to where it belongs, which is the Black woman. And you notice that in like the beauty standards, the change in the direction in which we view beauty as a whole. The most beautiful people all around the world are like they have typically Black futures or futures that you find recognizable in Black women, right? Whereas for men, like even if we look in like beauty standards are different all around the world, right? Because men in Italy do not look like men in the UK, men in the UK do not look like men in the
right.
US. But what you will find is that um, Blackness obviously is the most scrutinized thing all around the world, even for Black women. That is definitely true.
Yeah.
But I also think that there is a level of there's a lesser um, there's a lesser idea of like furthering masculinity for Black men as it is for Black women. Femininity has always belonged to to Black women, right? This idea of masculinity has is it comes from a westernization and a colonization idea of it, if that makes sense. So
It-
because of that, yeah, the idea of masculinity is very constrictive for the Black man, especially, and it attacks them vigorously. So making a commitment with that is difficult in comparison to, and I'm not saying at all that like because of the fact that I understand intersectionality, I'm not speaking to like where we are in society, but more so the psyche of it. Because of the fact that we're not allowed to build an emotional relationship with ourselves from the beginning of our lives, we find it difficult. We find it more and more difficult to understand what emotional relationships are to begin with.
right.
And that's when a woman says like, why can't you be emotional, or why can't you like think for a second from your emotional intelligence? And you even hear men say like, oh, I looked at this logically over emotion, but that doesn't make sense because emotional intelligence exists. And so accessing that emotional intelligence takes time, and it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of good therapy. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of putting yourself out of the societal lens that you're constricted in. And that's it.
That makes sense. Sounds like men struggle with masculinity like women struggle with beauty.
There we go. Yeah.
Sounds like the same. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
get
That women can be equal to men.
Do I think women can be equal to men?
Yes.
I think women have surpassed men, and that's okay. Like if
we
you
do
look at
too? No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
educate no, but on an educational note, yeah, like that's something that we just have to like as a collective, as men, we just have to catch up on. But it's also again that relationship, right? You guys have sat like for I think decades on the couch raising children. And then you said we are not going to do this anymore because men are leaving us. So we need to up ourselves. And you did. And so you rose up and you got more educated. You got like women couldn't get into school. Look at women now. Black women are the most educated Black people all around the world, and that's just a fact. And so if we know that, like obviously, community means immunity, right? And community starts with the Black woman. So I looked at that. Daquan said like community because that specifically, right, is a really important aspect that we as men need to honor more, so that we can build that aspect amongst men as well. Like, hey, go to school. Like, really, no, go to school and get a degree in something that is not just gonna get you money now, but it's gonna be feasible. Like, not to be dark, but we're about to like people went into commercial space flight. They're about to build a hotel on the moon. Like Black people need to upgrade themselves. We need to get out of this class that we're in. And that's only going to work if we're going to all hold each other accountable to a certain standard. And I think that Black women have done that. And we as men just have to follow up. And that's it.
Miss Londa, I don't know if I think that and I'm definitely pro girl power. I can do anything you can do and I can do it better. I'm definitely there at this stage in my life. However, I really don't believe that we are better or can be better than men. I really believe that as a collective, we are better together. The masculine, feminine
Right. Yeah.
I agree with that.
truly is better together
I didn't
and
mean
stronger.
I just meant like equal.
I
Right.
even
Yeah. Equal.
just feel
Yes.
like together, if we could figure out how, like we talked last week, if we could just figure out how to be together without it being toxic, it is the most powerful thing out there. I'm okay by myself, and I know that he's okay by himself. But oh, if we could just get it together. Oh,
See,
power.
I want to say,
It's not good for
to,
men to be alone.
to,
That's what the
Yeah.
Bible says.
I want to say that to answer your question, I do feel we're together, like Twana, right? You said
Stanza,
if we
yeah.
come together, we're equal. I feel like we're honestly a puzzle piece. I strictly go by the laws of nature, and I think if we follow the laws of nature as opposed to these different ideologies and these different movements, it would be
Right.
easy to come together. But I feel like, different movements such as like feminism and toxic masculinity and these type of ideologies really destroyed the family dynamic and us living in harmony. If everybody kind of, reverted back to the laws of nature, and no, the laws of nature are not fair. They have their advantages and disadvantages for both men and women.
Yes.
I think today now, though, unfortunately, it is pushed that, men have to accept the disadvantages and women shouldn't. And a lot of women fall into that, unfortunately, and it kind of creates this, hey, I'm equal or better than you, and it's like, no, that kind of messes up the flow and balance of how things are. It's like, you have your advantages and disadvantages, and so do I, and we accept them. And it's like, if most women accepted the disadvantages too and take the advantages and just come together as a unit, we would never really have any problem. But it's a lot of psychological damage and psychological warfare being done that kind of really messes up the whole coming together part.
I feel like with women, my experience and the women that I know is that when we find ourselves in a relationship with a man who has the right masculinity that brings out our femininity, we have no problem submitting. We have no problems just like, and it fits and it flows so beautifully that no one feels suppressed. No one feels, out of place. No one feels like they have to fight for any power, because there's power in both. There's power in masculinity and there's power in femininity. Oh, there's a lot of power in that. So nobody loses when it blends well. But like you said, we're in a world and in a system right now that just does not, everybody's so confused because there's so many people in your ear. But when two people that, are right for each other come together, it's such a beautiful thing.
I also want to tie into what Rico was saying also about single mother households, because that's pivotal in the masculinity of a man. Like you said, I have 2 daughters. I can teach them how to deal with men, but I can never teach them to be a woman. And if I had a son, the woman couldn't teach him how to be a man. I have to do that. And that's very pivotal. I grew up in a single family household. And I'll be honest, I struggle with developing that full masculinity. So it's very pivotal that you have both parents in the household for both sexes, because parents have to be great teachers too, because once you have that type of energy and you're teaching the kid, they can grow up understanding how to be and not having to be searching for themselves or searching for masculinity or looking at the wrong examples of how to be feminine or masculine. Once you kind of have it and it's innate, then a man can approach a woman, and like you said, a woman could fall into her femininity.
Fall right in place. Yeah. When it's the right one.
But doesn't that
Or you
speak
can
to
end
more?
up with that Kevin
Don't,
Samuels.
Oh no,
Don't start. Don't start.
start on him.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
I'm
And
sorry.
then you bring out that
Hey.
other side of me. I'm trying to rest in my femininity.
Hey.
You're gonna bring that other girl out.
Hey, but a lot
doesn't
of
that
black women ain't not dealing with black men right now. You know, a lot of them are pursuing their
That's
careers
true.
and school, and and they're waiting for the later years to start families and being passed up.
But see,
Because,
that's what I was saying earlier, that I think that the bigger commitment issue right now is for us middle-aged Black women. We are like, oh, no, honey, gone somewhere. We don't have time for you. We are the more difficult. Say that again, Miss Londa.
Been there, done that, gone with the nonsense.
Gone with it. We don't have time. I feel like we're and I'm one of them, and I know that I'm a problem. So I just feel like that we're the bigger issue. I think that the younger you are, the more forgiving and the more willing you are to maybe try again. When we get older and also settled in our ways, and we've been doing it by ourselves, it's not worth the headache.
Yes,
I
But
think that's
I
the
can
problem
admit
too.
that being
they're not gonna
I
submit.
have been doing it on my own since I
Oh,
was
yeah. Oh, you got
Y'all
to be
ain't going.
somebody to get us to submit. Oh, you got to be something.
but that's what a lot
I
of
used to pay the bills at my previous marriage house, and I would say, I'm the king of the house. She would get the beatboxing on me.
Yeah,
I say that
you
now.
have
She be
6
like,
bullets in
baby,
your behind. You could even finish that sentence.
that's I think that's shared amongst a lot of young women though now. Like
You
that's the
think?
thing. Yes, because I date young. I'm 25, so I date
Oh.
within my I date within my age group. So when I even
See?
when I go up to women now, like it's extremely like, what do you do? Like,
Difficult.
how do you do it? No. It's not even difficult. It's just an equal field. Like just as much as I want to date someone that is professional and successful, she wants to date someone that is professional and successful. I have a house. I'm 25. Like I have no kids. There's a bunch of things that I take off a list for a woman that like rings success, but that doesn't mean successful thought. That just means
No,
success,
bro,
right?
you a black man. We gotta try hard. You gotta be beyond perfect, and that ain't good enough
No, I don't
for the
think that's
black
it. But
woman.
you're
I don't
25.
Y'all
think that
shutting
either.
us down.
Yeah.
We
I'm
ain't
just
got
going.
this
Yeah.
and that and that.
Mega,
We ain't
how
got
old are
this and
you?
that and that.
If you don't mind me asking.
Don't even.
I'm
You
34,
ain't
but
giving us the time
I
today.
agree
Y'all
with
don't want
Rico,
an average
and
man.
I was
Everybody want a
actually
high value man.
I was actually
A man
my
making
fault.
$40,000 a
Well,
year, a black woman ain't even looking at, especially if she got a degree. She ain't finna deal with no man making less than her. She ain't finna accept none of that. That's why we got all of these dynamics playing out. That
Rico's right.
I mean,
that brings me
and you see it 1 out of
Rico is
4
right.
men, black women being married. 1 out of 4. That's ridiculous. When we was 80% in my grandmother's generation, and
But
my
Rico has a
mother's
point, because
generation,
I was just
1 out of
having
4.
this conversation before. I was just having this conversation with my homegirl about interracial dating and the difference between how other races treat black men and how other races treat black women versus how we treat each other. And it's a big difference. And one of the main differences that I've seen from non-black women treating black men is that they don't really expect you to be perfect, as opposed to today's black women, kind of like what you said and what Rico said, is like 40 grand or 50 grand is not good enough, while like a white or Spanish woman come along, they're not thinking like, they're thinking like, I'm gonna build with him and I'm gonna see him get to 100 or even 1 million or whatever his bank account is gonna be. The black woman kind of like, if you don't have it already, I don't want to deal with you. So he's kind of right with that. It's a big difference.
Miss Londa, do you think
Let me
that's
take
true?
the mic for a minute. I don't
Go
want to
ahead.
just say that you guys are totally wrong on that. What I am going to say is that every woman does not think like that.
Right.
I am a woman that believes in, if I have a man and I see, that he can be better, I'm that woman that can stand behind him and make him be better. I'm not looking at it like, oh, he doesn't make such and such figures, so I can't deal with him. That's
Right.
not my place to down him, because if I'm coming with four kids from 4 baby daddies. Who am I to judge this man? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Nobody's perfect. You feel?
And I also think you're not the exception. Like I said, like the women that I date, and I mean date as in go on a date with, not be in a relationship with. I've been in a relationship for over the last 3 years, so I'm kind of tired. So I'm, and like Twana said earlier, yeah, you're gonna go through those cycles where you kind of have to reinvent yourself as a human being. Especially like the relationship with yourself is changing. So every 5 years, you go through that cycle where the paradigm shifts. And I do understand that. So that's why I'm dating right now to see like, what do I like exactly? Because I'm getting annoyed with a lot of different people for a lot of
Right.
different reasons. But what I will say is that like, I like from what I'm seeing is that a lot of people, especially when it comes to hypergamous dating, I make a good sum of money, right? And some people, um, from what I'm gathering is that people want to leave the state that they're in. They don't want to, especially if they're looking for a relationship that brings in longevity and that they want to build community with. They don't want to build it with someone that is not going to build it with them. They don't want to be left. And especially if you listen, like I've also noticed, like, and this is something that like my friends and I talk about, my guy friends and I talk about when we have conversations about this. We talk about like how when, like for instance, someone comes and explains something to me, whether it's a woman or a man, like usually what happens in a conversation, if it's not me, and I notice it like outside of the conversation, someone lays an Uno reverse card. Yeah, but you do this. So this is why this happens. Instead of just listening and just like taking it all in and being like, okay, I understand you. And this is how I experience it, right? So that's a different version of that. So I think that like when people talk about, for instance, what Maka said, right? People want to leave the class that they're in. And unfortunately, Blackness has a class around it. So there's two ways out of that class. There's either wealth and the addition of wealth, or leaving the race, which is, yeah, a lot of people think it's detrimental. I think it's a survivalist attitude, mainly because of the fact that if we look, like Black women are, we have more Black women than Black men. Um, so logically speaking, like we don't have enough men to match up with women, right? So women are eventually going to date someone else. Like, that's just a logicality. And right now, because of the addition of social media, everything is hyper visible. So we're seeing these people actually doing the thing that I'm talking about in comparison to 20 years ago where social media wasn't available and you didn't even have access to all of these people. So you don't see these things in your neighborhood, right? You see these things outside of your neighborhood.
Right.
So your neighborhood is less important. The world is more important. And that's where we're at, I think. So yeah, I don't think Miss Londa is the exception. I think that there's a lot of women that are actually capable of doing that.
Miss
See,
Londa, I think that
oh.
this might have been a good time to have a younger woman on, because what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is that sounds like something that is specific to maybe the younger generation woman, because maybe they don't have kids, maybe they've already had their degrees and they're expecting a little more. But I think in our generation, our expectations are very simple. We're expecting you not to be on the couch. We're expecting you to get up and go to work, contribute and participate in this stage of our lives, contribute and participate in the life that we're living, and not expect us as women to do everything. Now that's going to be your middle age, I'm 40 to 50, 60 and beyond. That's what we're looking at. Perhaps the younger girls, because I do, my daughters are in their 20s and my son is in his 20s. So I can see how maybe the younger generation who have already done their work and they haven't had kids yet. Maybe, Ms. Londa, you think that might be what we're hearing from these gentlemen?
I can tell you what I'm saying.
I think well, I'm gonna say, and I'm not for sure, but I think hearing Rico talk, I think he speaks from past experiences.
Right.
I think that's where a lot of problems come into relationships, is because we bring other things from other relationships and we look at like he thinks every woman is that way. Every woman is not that way.
Right.
You know,
I understand that,
say that
but
every man does women wrong.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And Twana, even if you look at IT, for instance, right? Like there's
Mhm.
such a huge group of Black young women that are in IT. Like it's incredible. And they're in leading positions, which like they're
Right.
in their 20s. Like this is the first time in like history, and that's what my mom said to me. Like the Black woman now earns as much as you. Like, so
Right.
what do
Right.
you have to bring to the table? And that's an important discussion. Like it
Yeah,
really is
and
important.
I think you're right because I listened to my daughter and what they have to say about it. But again, their position is a little bit different than mine. They're, 25 years my junior. And
Right.
so,
can I add something to that?
Can I
yeah,
read a comment from
Okay.
audience real quick, and then I'll let you have it?
Okay.
All right, so Coop says at the end of the day, it's about having someone that shows their value and not saying what they feel. They are worth. Age and wisdom balance the two.
yes,
I
yes,
agree. Yeah.
yes, yes.
And
I
so
agree with that.
I do too.
I
I do.
agree.
That's why I'm saying that must be people that haven't gone through it yet.
Yeah,
Once
the
we've
answer to
been
your
through it, we're a little different.
about the age difference and the thought
Yeah,
perception with the younger group, I feel like social media plays a big part.
yes,
Right.
Lord.
Yes, it
So
does.
it's
Yes,
like
Lord.
we want to keep up with the Joneses. If Mary over here is posting her and her boyfriend dressed up out on a date and they doing this lavish thing, then
Right.
this other couple wants to prove that they can do that too. So I feel like that plays a big part in it too.
Right.
Right, it does. Yeah.
People let
It really
social media
does.
dictate their relationships.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate because most younger people, like if they're in the mindset that's a little bit past that, right? But they're not interested in dating older people, and a lot of older people are not interested in dating younger people. So it's no harm, no foul, because we all feel the way
Mm,
about each other.
I
Well,
beg
man, I'm
I
well,
29.
Right.
well,
I
well,
beg to differ.
Well, except you,
well,
Rico. We already.
that depends. That definitely depends.
I was
But
gonna hold
it's
add a whole
unfortunate because
nother
sometimes you can be
dynamic to the
mentally
situation.
here, but
Okay.
your peer group is somewhere else, and that's yeah. I
Who,
don't know.
me? My group?
No, I'm just saying that as people, we can be mentally one place, but our peer group,
Can
is
be,
in a
yeah.
different
Yeah,
place.
I was gonna speak on that.
And
See, I was gonna speak on that by saying, like, okay, my situation. If I had took a wife 25 from America, that would never work. But see, because the culture is
the
different.
culture
All
is
this come
different.
into play, which is why I came down here because I wanted a more traditional wife. That's gonna stay at home, understand her position in the relationship. I don't have to feel like I'm competing with her, and she want to be me in the house. I pay all the bills, but even the dog got more authority in the house than me. You know what I'm saying? And I watch my mama do it too. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a pattern. And
But see, Rico, you have to admit though, in America, you wouldn't be able to do that because
yes,
not
I wouldn't.
because the
I
wife
agree.
or
I
but
totally
listen,
agree.
let me make this point real quick. It's not just because the woman wouldn't be willing to. It's because you can't. In America, she can't stay home. She's got to go to work if you're going to have what you have here. Do you see
Well,
what I'm saying? So it's different because you have less is required in some countries, so they can stay traditional women.
Right. Yep.
But if you come to America and you want to have a 1-bedroom apartment, both of you are going to have to go to work. So
Even
you
maternity
can't have a
leave, like
traditional family. Do you know what I'm
even
saying?
maternity
well, my
leave, like maternity.
situation, I got options. You know what I'm saying? I
But
spend my years
but you
working.
understand my point is that it's not
I'm
always
50.
because of the women in America. It is because
No,
of the
no,
life in America.
but it's a cultural thing too. The cultural. Certain women not even gonna consider that because she don't want to be a stay-at-home a woman, or she don't want to be a wife. She want to be married, but really don't know what being a wife is, or what That's why they be like, I'm a homemaker, but you ain't got no father in the house. So how you a homemaker? You just stay at home. Somebody got to take care of the kids, but you there by yourself. that ain't a homemaker associated with being a wife, but not in this generation.
I don't think so.
A home
No.
Homemaker is associated with a home.
at home and still
Right. Well, why is she at home? Because she got a husband that's
But
providing
there's,
for her to be
but
at home.
even if we
Am
would
I
look
right
in like,
or am I wrong?
even with,
Which is
even
the
if,
dynamic that I'm talking about, a traditional marriage.
even if
You
we
know
would
what I'm
look in
saying?
like where the idea of traditional marriage comes from, right? So there's two aspects. One is the Christian aspect, the Westernized aspect, right? And the other one is the Afrocentric aspect. And in that dynamic in particular,
Different.
like there's no real like gender specific roles.
Everybody working.
Right. Whatever works. And then beyond that, like even if you would look at the Nigerian market, for instance, right? The marketplace in like in Lagos, the women run that. Like the women legitimately count all the money. They go back home and the husbands make sure that everything is paid for. There's just a different relationship dynamic, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that that's the case.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know what relationship dynamics look like or can look like, and so because of that, they feel constrained and they don't feel like relationships will work for them in that context. When all it takes is communication. You don't
And
want to
you
do
got to
that? Fine.
remember, like you said earlier, that there's a breakdown in the masculinity too. So
Right.
while it's very easy to say that women don't know how to be
Right.
traditional wives, you got to recognize that men don't know how to be husbands either.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There we
'cause I
go.
was just gonna say, I hear a lot of women
So it's both of us.
not knowing how to be
I'm not talking about every woman. It just seemed like
Right.
a lot of us women have no choice or have never had that chance
Right.
to be that
Can I
submissive woman, you
Yeah.
know, play
can I
that
comment on that?
a lot of men want us women to play.
Can I comment on that? Because
And I
what you said is
comment from the yes, you can go on then I'm
yeah,
gonna comment.
yeah. So what you're saying there is like the biggest part of it, and I feel like the attitude or the stance that not all black women, of course, but you know, the collective black woman has against a black man is the frustration of having to pull weight. But I feel like a part of me feels like that was done by design, because I feel like in America, the
I
black
agree.
woman is the only woman that has to do that. No other race woman has to do it.
don't do that.
But
I agree.
yeah, so another thing too, and this is why what Rico said with a single mother household being a huge problem is that now when independent women run into these men that come from single mother household, sorry, these men are not men yet. So they get even more frustrated and it's like, no, you know what? Now I'm gonna build a wall. And every other man that comes after that, you gotta be something. So it's like, you can't really be too mad at the woman or
Anybody.
the man. You can't, you just gotta,
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like it's a system
Or
that
the
was
woman.
designed by non-blacks. I honestly, that's
We
my
gotta
personal
tell the
We
truth.
talked about that last week, Rico. You remember?
So I said it's something that is designed by and it's a system that runs on an autopilot. They know what they're doing. They know how they disenfranchise men to make it that where we're gonna be frustrated and have to work 10 times as harder than any other race to put food on the table and a roof over the shelter, if not even resort to making bad decisions such as selling drugs to our community, scamming or whatever else just to make ends meet. And it's like, if you put any other race under those same type of pressures, they might do the same thing. But that system is like, that's what's making the whole problem, like the real issue. And it's sad because now you go out and like I said, I've dated Spanish and white. And a white woman don't care how much I got. Spanish women don't care. They like, yo, I'm gonna help you get to wherever you need to get. And they don't have that wall that black women develop. And before, you know, my younger self, I used to be mad at black women, like, why are you like that? But now I'm like, I understand because I came from a single mother household, had to kind of teach myself to be a man. And then it's to a point I don't even have male friends because I understand I can't really help or be around too many men that come from single parent households or even two parent households because they still have more femininity than masculinity. And I'm like, yo, I need to be around masculinity or build it within myself. So it's a vicious cycle. It's a struggle. It's a real struggle.
And it's unbalanced for all of us. And it's something that when two people come together, that they really have to work hard to overcome and to understand each other's positions. That's the only way that it's going to work. You need to know why I feel this way. It's not just about you. It's about what I've been through. And the same thing with the man. It's about what I've been through. And so that we can like agree to help each other look past it. And we talked about that, Rico, when we had the other conversation. And it's, you know, it's that whole Willie Lynch syndrome that we just
Yeah.
I feel
I mean,
bad
I
for the
had
women.
to
I feel
overcome
bad for the women
a
that I feel
language
bad for the women
barrier
that
just to make
Yeah.
this marriage work.
Yeah.
She don't speak English, and I didn't know how to speak Spanish, but I had to learn that, which, you know, I use body language, eye contact. It made a closer development, because the work needed to make it work. You know, we had to put something into it for the, you know what I'm saying? It didn't just come for free. It didn't just come easy.
And see, imagine if a Black man and a Black woman could get together in a relationship and put that kind of work in to just, you know, if we could put that kind of work in with each other to overcome all of our struggles and all the barriers that have been put before us, things could probably work out here too, you know? But oftentimes we don't have the patience because we have attitudes with each other, like you've already said. And they really are not based on anything that we've actually done. Because by the time you're dealing with a person, they've got nothing to do with what happened 300 years ago or 400 years ago and how they set us up. But we can't see that, and we won't put the work into working it out within ourselves. And so our families break up and we just keep repeating the cycle. And
Right.
solution, I think, for that would be.
I'm gonna read.
But I think that like,
Katie, I'm gonna read the
what was
comment really quick. So
Yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
an older woman wants to find someone to spend the end days with, as older men. Younger people want someone to have fun with, and if it gives more profit than decline with sex, family, work, etc., people want what they want for the moment. And before you know it, 20 years is gone. That's how your plan changes for life.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that like, if I can put it back to like the topic of commitment, like it speaks to like obviously when we speak about why men have a problem with commitment, right? Like we're obviously going to focus on the Black man because of the fact that we're all Black, but like I think if we look largely and just to pan out for 1 second, like if we look, even if we look in other communities, even though the numbers say something different, and you can look on this all around the world, not just in America, because of the fact that like if you look at, for instance, the UK, Black men and Black women will have the same dynamics. If you look at like Italy, for instance, Black people there will have the same dynamics. Same thing as Spain and Barcelona. Like even though there's traditionalism and it's high, it's like the impact is still the same because of Westernization, right? We all go
Right.
through the same thing. But when we look at like other communities, men still have that issue, and that's largely because of the culture around masculinity, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it becomes a bad thing when men don't go to therapy to solve their emotions, but they instead want to find something in order to, like solve their emotions for them. And so what I've largely seen is that people become punching bags for emotions instead of like us communicating about our emotions, if that makes sense. And or we are unable to communicate our emotions to such an effect that we won't pursue a relationship in which our emotions are challenged, right? Because we're scared to confront them. And what does confrontation look like if it gets there? Because we have a lot of non-healthy examples in society of how men deal with confrontation, right? Especially on the emotional front. So on a large level, I think that it speaks to the fact that we, as a collective, like, and that I can just speak for men, not for women, because I think that's one thing in which that's why I said like women have us beat on the equality level because of the fact that they're more in touch with their emotions, and they're allowed to, in comparison to us, where we're not allowed to.
Right.
And we're not allowed to go to therapy. That's why the suicide rates amongst, and especially Black men all around the world as well, are incredibly high, right? Mainly because of the fact that we're just unable to communicate through things because of what society puts us through. In comparison to, if you look at, for instance, our women counterparts, they're able to go to therapy and it's not frowned upon. It's not looked at something weird. And even the Black community accepts it a lot more, even though we have a scrutinized idea about therapy, than they would about men. Because why the fuck do you need to talk, quote unquote? Sorry for saying that
No,
word. Why the
right.
hell do you need to talk, right? In comparison to like women talking about their emotions, because they can just go ahead and talk and there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we as a society, but especially us as a race, can focus on to help with. And I think that that's the case. Like for a lot of young boys, like you see them go through all of these problems, but you don't know, for instance, that there's such a thing as neurodiversity. Like younger boys can go through ADHD, autism, et cetera, and they're just not helped in the same capacity as women. And I'm not gonna, like, even when we look at women like that, right? That level of like ignoring that for such a long time, because women are told to perform almost immediately when they are born. Like you have to perform for this, that, and the third. You have to always be perfect. So on both levels, like there is just there's this unbalance with us truly tapping into our emotions and truly being able to accept them. But women have the tools and men don't. And I think that that's where that acceptance of commitment steps in. Like, what does commitment look like for you? What does a relationship look like to you? What is the first relationship that you can remember? Like, how is your relationship with your parents? All of those things are really important. Like a lot of people love their mother because it's their mother, but I love my mother because it's my mother and she's Lucretia. Like I got to know her as Lucretia and my mother, right? In comparison to a lot of men just knowing them as their mother, and that's it. So yeah, like I think that yeah, it just requires a lot of good thought and good communication. Again, I can just rely on that
A
the whole
lot of
time.
work and a
A
lot
lot
of
of work, trust
yeah,
me.
a lot of work.
That too, that what we're see, so you guys are speaking a lot on other cultures. Other cultures are automatically taught these values, whereas we as Americans, we are not taught those same values. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
you know
But
what I
you
mean?
know what? One of the points that he was just making is that, but even in the other cultures, the differences in the numbers with the Black people in those cultures still reflect the same thing. So while you might be saying in, a Latin American country or wherever, but the numbers of the way the dysfunction for Black people in that country is still representing the same thing that we see here in America, because ultimately the Western culture pretty much dominates the world.
right,
And the views pretty much dominate the world. And so our experience as Black people, whether we're Black people in Britain or Black people in, China, because there are Black people there too.
and we've seen that.
You're right.
Right.
You're right.
So wherever
Right,
we are, we're disproportionately off balance.
right, exactly.
I think
And even
that
if
was
you
So
think about that,
one,
like the all of the culture that we learn, right, is Eurocentric. So
right.
because it's Eurocentric, these aspects are going to be taught in different countries that are Eurocentric. So all
And with the
Westernized
same
countries,
outcome.
there we
but
go.
you know,
Look at
one thing I saw interesting down here is there's a lot of Asian people here that
Mhm.
speak good Spanish. But when you ask them what are they don't say I'm Asian. They say I'm Dominican. It's like, so our whole racial thing is like different
Right.
because we think how America is, that everywhere in the world is like that. Like I've been down here
It's
with
not.
white people and they don't look at us like that's a white dude, that's a black dude. They say that's two gringos, and then they try to swindle us both the same. They see us as the same though, but in America we see each other as different, and I found that like sort of a little fascinating. Like, damn, they see us the same, but when I return home, it's back to that BS. We and America could be a great country if we could. Like, man, I really wish that. I mean, I really that even as Black people, we could fix our relationships. We could fix these dynamics, even with the country. if that dynamic alone would repair a lot of things that's going on with Black people, because a lot of it is the stresses of that life. We just all started, it all started with somewhere in the house.
I
You go
think this
through
whole
that Willie Lynch letter,
conversation-
you can sit there and write down exactly how that letter affected your life. So you can't
Yeah.
say it ain't real, because every one
But
of
I
the
think
last
this
one
whole
of us.
conversation is about the fact that we can't fix it in this country if we can't fix it with each other.
Right.
That's the bottom line. So we have to be
That's
able to
true.
fix it amongst ourselves, especially the male-female dynamic. If we can't
Yeah.
fix that to get amongst ourselves, we're not really going to be able to fix anything. We're not going to be able to fix our families. We're not going to be able to fix our children. We're not going to be able to fix the generations to come if we can't.
And
I would
Twana, to add to that, I think that the most
let's
important
say,
thing is just what.
JD, real quick. I
Go
just
ahead.
say, welcome, Day Day. Thank you for
Yes,
joining.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Just to
Hi,
bring
my
you
love.
up to speed, our topic this week is do men really want commitment? And so we had a lot of great point of views going on here. So if you would like to jump in and voice your opinion, we'd love to hear from you. I would like to also thank Mikhail for joining us. Just so you guys know, I put up the link for people to join in and voice their opinion. So there might be people jumping in and out. So welcome, Mikhail. And you can take it from here, JD.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that, like I don't think that it's only on the dynamic with each other, but I also think it's really with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like the first step is really fixing ourselves and then going into the dynamic. Because far too often you see that people want to fix it with the dynamic, but what work have you done on you? So, and I think that that's exactly what a lot of people are missing. Like just start to work on yourself, start building a relationship with yourself, and then start looking into what type of relationship you want with someone else.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
And it also varies too on the person, the man or the woman, because not a lot of us know what we really want. It really does depend. So we have to think about that as well. We can't determine what a person really wants unless we sit down and communicate with each other.
Exactly. A lot of times people get into relationships just because they don't want to be alone. So
right,
that's a big part of it too.
And usually that means that's exactly what you need to be alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people are afraid. Some people are afraid to be alone. Some people are afraid that if they're alone by themselves, that they don't know what they want to do. I used to be one of those people that used to be afraid to just be alone and, reconnect with myself. I always had to be in a relationship with someone because I was afraid to be alone. I was afraid that if I didn't take that time out to be alone to myself, I needed that person right there. I feel like that only because of me being brought up in a household where we wasn't taught how to love unconditionally. I think that made me want someone around constantly all the time. So growing up, I had to look at, it's okay to be alone. If it doesn't work out, don't force it. If it's meant to be, it'll come back. So I have to tell myself all the time, if it's okay for me to be alone, it's all right for me to be alone. Maybe I need to work on myself just a little bit more, than being with someone else.
Yeah.
See, the thing is too, I was thinking, we've been doing this bottom-up approach of working on ourselves, first. And, for years, I used to agree with that because that is a part of the solution. But I feel like as I get older, we should have more top-down approach. We start from the top and work our way down to the community. And when I say the top, I'm saying like have our own Black media, positive Black media, not CNN and all these other stations, something that's strictly for us. And also kind of work our way. We need more lawyers into the law system to change the laws that's going on. And because these people are masters of words and linguistics and etymology. And the reason why this system runs on autopilot is because first and foremost, the law and the media are affecting us every day. So it's like, us in this room with our experience and stuff like that, most of us probably had to learn through experience. The more fortunate could have learned by example of others or, just reading books. but not everybody as a collective in the Black community is going to be able to work on themselves. Some people are so distracted and so much in turmoil and trying to survive and have their needs met that they don't have time to work on themselves. And there's a reason for that. And that starts with the media, and that starts with our justice system. Our justice system has been written in a way to keep us in this hamster in a wheel. So I feel like, for years we've been doing this bottom up, working ourselves and then build community, the generational wealth and da. It's like every time we get to the top of the pyramid, something happens and we fall back down. Tulsa, Oklahoma, go up, fall back down. Before the crack era in the 80s, it was going up because just like Rico said, it was an 80% marriage. We got up, then they brought crack into the community. We fell back down. So now, like, what? Forget that. Let's get a top-down method where we start with the justice system and the media, because the media affects the mind, and that's even more so a big part that's adding damage to the Black man and Black woman commitment dynamic, in my opinion.
Yeah, but even if we look at those times, like working on ourselves has never been really promoted in a positive way. Like we've worked on the community. Yes, we've always worked for the betterment of our community. Yes, because of the fact that we were always so far forward minded on getting Black people out of the place that we were at. But that was like I remember even when I hear my grandmother talk, like she didn't really have a mind of her own. She was community minded most of the time. Like she wasn't focused on herself. In her later years, she became more focused on herself. She became more adapt and able to say like, okay, this is what I truly want, right? And that's why you see most of these relationships, like most of these relationships that were about my father and mother's generation, which is like the 60s, 70s, like those people come into a relationship in which they recognize like, hey, this is not what I truly want, and they leave it, and then they're done, and that's it. Like it's the aspect of really truly understanding oneself, and that and I do completely agree that that has something to do with media, but at the same time I still think that we have never really been able or awarded the rest and the okayness to really work on ourselves. Like we've been
Yeah, I kind of feel like that too, because when you said working from the top down, the first thing that came to my mind was fixing your head first.
Right.
And, so
there we go.
I understand what you're saying. I think that whenever you take someone out of a traumatic situation, if you pull a kid out of a household where they've been abused, or you take anyone, that's been through some trauma, the first thing you do is give them some therapy, right?
Right.
If you try to give them, and I think that's where our community has not been able to really heal itself. Because
Right.
every time we get to a point where, okay, we're recognizing that, wait, we're in a problem, people start throwing all kinds of things. Okay, fix this, fix that, fix this.
Right.
Fix and get together. Let's march. Let's do this, right? And there's so much to pick and choose from to start to fix the laws, all the things that you mentioned. We still never take time to like figure out what's
wrong
going
in our
on.
heads.
What's going on under the wig?
Right.
what's
And
happening here? So I think that it may take a whole generation of just healing literally our brains and reprogramming our children and their thinking. It just may take that.
But you see,
Right. And also
we are different. We are different with
know?
that though, because I feel like I'm 34. I've been hearing this rhetoric that you and JD are speaking from a little kid, generations, a generation.
But have you done the work?
That's passed. The thing is, I feel like we'll never get that break, that rest that you're talking about to do that because of
you're
media
right.
and the law.
That's
like what you say. I completely agree. When I was growing up, I'm like, yeah, just work on myself, and then I tell my friend, I tell a friend, and then I watch those same three. They're so distracted they can't do it. So now I'm like, okay, I could do it for myself and maybe us and maybe 1 out of every 5 people, but it's like we need the majority. We need 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5 to
Yep.
do it. In order to do that, you would have to change what's affecting us, which is the justice system and the media. Media, like you
But
said,
can we
my person.
change those things
But
if our
and
minds
even
aren't right?
right, and even in that, oh,
Here's the
go ahead,
pyramid.
go ahead.
Here's why my fault. Here's where I say, the reason why I say pyramid, because at the top it's a small group of people. So it would take a small group of people like us to influence a little bit of people to get these people in higher places. We can't bring everybody up. It's gonna have to start small and then branch down. Why? Because I'm a psychology major. I personally feel if I was in charge, every single person would have a therapist. But then you have social media saying, or rap or hip hop, one of these genres, people making millions, that kind of
Right.
like down therapy. So now people are looking at that and saying, you know what, nah, I don't want to do therapy, even though they need it, right? So when it comes to this therapy aspect, we could throw therapy in their face. They've been doing it for years. How many people are actually utilizing it to
Right.
work on themselves, to make themselves better? So that's why I say, you know what, we got to change, because when Tupac and Nipsey and these people who really want to make change in the community get to a certain level, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they get killed. So that's that bottom up mentality. We've been doing bottom up. It hasn't been working. So I feel like top down now, with people like us spread, get into positions of power, and then we could affect the masses on the
I
back. I
think
mean,
I
it's not as realistic as I'm making it seem, but
right.
just
No, I agree. I think it is really beautiful. But the issue that I have with it is still like we have a lot of westernized ideals that we even spread in like the smallest of our behaviors, right? And so that by nature, like even if you would look in media in countries where people are majority black, right? So like Nigeria is a really good example because everyone, when they think of African people, they think of Nigerians. Nigerian media is really westernized, and it's really it has an extreme colonized mindset, right? And that speaks to the fact that we as Black people are not able to just detach from this idealism because of the fact that we've been so indoctrinated, right, by this idealism almost consistently. So what Twana said, what you said, would you say, and what Twana is saying still holds true in both aspects because of the fact that you need both things. One thing can't survive without another, right? You need therapy for people who, and especially the promotion of therapy in a way that is going to help people decolonize their mindset, right? And then you need people that are decolonizing mindset to go into media and to actually show a different perspective and a different aspect. And so then we can get into a level of like truly healing our community, right? So it's both things. And I think that's happening now. Like even though like the people that are far younger than me, the 16-year-olds, right? The way that they're dominating TikTok, for instance, it's incredible. Like it's impeccable
Incredible.
to see what they're doing. And that shows to me that like and it's also because I see it that it's not just having influence on an app, it's actually coming back to them in real life. And that's the difference. Like they're outspoken and they're true in their outspokenness. And whatever they're doing, like whatever they talk about when it comes to gender, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to all of those aspects, talk about it. Because at the end of the day, like I'm not gonna do that because of the fact that my generation, even though I'm younger, it's already doomed into just existing in the same way as my parents did, because of the fact that we were like my parents were like, I think my parents' generation were able to talk to their children in a different way and to raise their children in a different way, but the aspect still held true of westernized colonization, right? And so now we're getting into a moment where these teenagers and these almost adults now are doing so many outstanding things, and they're being rewarded for it by society, and it's being highly promoted what they're doing, and that's the difference. Like it's offering people a different perspective. Like I remember when someone took a trip out of my class through the entirety of like Asia, right? And they were able to see Black people in Asia and how they live, and it changed their mind forever. And they were able to spread that in the classroom, and they were able to show pictures of how they lived, and et cetera, et cetera. And it changed our minds about Black people too, because of the fact that like when you just think about Black people in your neighborhood, then you're never going to really see what Black people can amount to.
Right.
Because of the fact that we're so indoctrinated by the same shit. So, and that speaks back to commitment, right? Those idealisms that we have hold true in the neighborhood that we live in because of the fact that we're just seeing that into consistency. But when we stop seeing that, when we start panning out, that's when shit comes in and you can actually dissect it and see like this works for me and this doesn't. A lot of words, I'm so sorry.
Right.
And that's the last time that I will give you
Good
a whole
conversation.
lot.
I tell you what, this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
This is on for
Yeah,
hours.
this, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to end, but I really did enjoy this. I enjoyed this discussion. I loved everybody's different opinions and was glad that people can agree to disagree and voice
Without fighting. We didn't even fight.
When you have like-minded people that think the same, of course, it's going to always be on the same page without the arguments and the fighting and the fussing.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what
That's
this
so
platform
powerful.
is for. There is no right or wrong answer. Everybody can come here, speak their mind, voice their opinion. You're not going to be bashed. Agree to disagree because everybody's not going to always agree.
Agree.
We're all different. People. We all have different personalities. So,
And different experiences.
yes, for a good discussion.
Yeah.
I hope to have you back soon. Thank you for joining in. Have a good night.
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Guys, have a good night.
It was fun. Good night.
All right.